What if the wisest mind on earth could not master his own desires? What if the man who built a house for God slowly built altars for his enemies? What if a heart could speak in prayers at dawn and drift into compromise by nightfall? Imagine having everything: power, peace, gold, songs, fame, yet losing the one thing that holds it all together. What if your greatest gift became the doorway to your greatest downfall? Here is the gripping truth: a divided heart never stays divided. It always chooses a side, slowly, quietly, and then all at once. This is the story of King Solomon's divided heart. Long ago in the ancient hills of Israel, the air carried the scent of olive trees and altar smoke. Jerusalem stood like a crown on a ridge, stone and dust, song and sacrifice. The throne of David was still warm with promise. David, the warrior king, the poet king, had fought giants and nations. But now his sword was set aside, his strength faded. And the kingdom, held together by faith and loyalty, stood at a crossroads. Solomon, David's son, was young, still learning the weight of a crown, and all of heaven watched. Because the story of Israel was never only about kings. It was about covenant, about worship, about a God who refuses to be one among many. David lay near the end of his days, and the palace whispered with uncertainty. Rivals shifted like shadows. Ambitions sharpened their knives. Yet David called Solomon close, one final charge, one final flame of purpose. "Be strong," David said. "Show yourself a man, walk in the ways of the Lord." And then David was gone. The city mourned. The throne stood empty for a breath, and then Solomon sat upon it, not with a roar, with a steady hand, with eyes that searched the horizon. The kingdom needed more than bravery now. It needed wisdom. So Solomon went to Gihon, where the great high place stood. Night fell, the lamps flickered, the offerings burned, and Solomon slept. Then God came to him in a dream, gentle, holy, unmistakable, and God spoke, "Ask what I shall give you." Solomon's mind raced. He could ask for long life. He could ask for riches. He could ask for vengeance on every enemy of his father. But something deeper stirred, something rare. Solomon answered, "I am but a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in. Give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people." An understanding heart, not merely a clever mind, an inner compass tuned to God. And God replied, "Because you have asked this, I will give you a wise and discerning mind, and also what you did not ask for, riches and honor. And if you walk in my ways, I will lengthen your days." The dream ended, but the promise remained. Solomon returned to Jerusalem, and the first light of his reign rose. Soon wisdom was no longer rumor, it was evidence. 2 women stood before the king. 1 child lived. 1 child was gone. Both claimed the living child as their own. The court held its breath as voices tangled into grief and accusation. Solomon listened. He did not rush. He did not posture. He said, "Bring me a sword." Gasps rippled through the room. And Solomon declared, "Divide the living child in 2. Give half to one and half to the other." 1 woman cried out, breaking like a wave, "Give her the child, only let him live." The other hardened, "Let it be neither mine nor hers. Divide him." Solomon's eyes narrowed, clear as dawn. "Give the child to the one who pleaded for his life. She is the mother." And the people marveled, because wisdom is not loud. Wisdom is accurate, and for a time, Israel was steady. Peace surrounded the borders. Trade flowed like rivers. The nations looked toward Jerusalem as if it were a new sun. Solomon's fame spread. He spoke proverbs like arrows. He composed songs like rain. He built cities. He organized justice. He gathered knowledge the way others gathered weapons. And then came the project that would define him. The temple, not a palace for Solomon, a house for the name of the Lord. Cedars were brought down from Lebanon. Stones were cut in silence. Gold was shaped until it caught the light like fire. Day after day, year after year, the temple rose, beautiful, ordered, sacred. Then the day came. The priests carried the ark. The people assembled, trumpets sounded. The sanctuary waited. Solomon stood before the altar, and his voice lifted over the crowd. Will God indeed dwell on the earth? The heavens cannot contain you, how much less this house I have built. And he prayed, pleading for mercy, for forgiveness, for God's attention toward his people. Then it happened. The cloud of the Lord filled the house. So thick, so heavy, so holy, the priests could not stand to minister. Israel trembled with awe. Solomon blessed the people. Sacrifices were offered, joy overflowed. It was a mountaintop moment, and mountaintops feel like they will last forever, but they do not. Time passed. Success settled in like comfort. Comfort softened vigilance, and Solomon began to reach for more, not because he lacked, but because he could. More influence, more alliances, more security. And the ancient world had a language for alliances. Marriage. Solomon took a wife from Egypt, then another, and another, Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian, Hittite. Not merely women, political treaties with beating hearts. And at first it seemed harmless. He still offered sacrifices. He still spoke of the Lord. He still carried the title, King of Israel. But compromise rarely announces itself with thunder. It comes like a slow fog, quiet, persistent, numbing. The law had warned Israel, do not give your heart to other gods. Do not bind yourself to those who will turn you away. Yet Solomon, wise Solomon, believed he could manage the risk. He had wisdom, did he not? He had control, did he not? But the heart is not governed by intelligence alone. The years moved forward and the number grew. 700 wives, 300 concubines. 1,000 voices in the halls, 1,000 desires, 1,000 longings, 1,000 small moments where worship shifted by an inch. And then, inevitably, his wives spoke, not with swords, not with threats, with familiarity, with tenderness, with daily persuasion. Come with me, one said, to my place of prayer. Honor my people, another whispered. This is how my father worshipped. This is how my mother found comfort. And Solomon, who once prayed for an understanding heart, began to misunderstand his own. At first he watched. Then he stood nearby. Then he funded. Then he built. Altars rose on high places. Incense drifted where it did not belong. Songs were sung to names that were not the Lord, and Solomon permitted it. But still he told himself, I am king, I hold the center. Yet the center was shifting. A divided heart does not stay balanced. It leans again, it tilts, and then it falls. If this story is speaking to you, take a moment to subscribe and stay with us. These cinematic Bible narrations continue every week. And now, back to Solomon. The tragedy is not that Solomon forgot God's name. The tragedy is that Solomon tried to place God beside other names, as though the Holy One could be one lantern among many. As though the covenant could share a throne. The hills around Jerusalem, once quiet witnesses to prayer, now held rival fires. Chemosh, Melech, Ashtoreth. And the city that held the temple also held temptation. Then, in the midst of Solomon's prosperity, the unseen began to fracture. Enemies stirred at the edges like cracks in stone that widen with time. Hadad rose up, an adversary from Edom. Rezon gathered strength, trouble from Syria. And even within Israel, another name began to surface, Jeroboam, a capable man, a worker, a leader. Solomon promoted him, perhaps seeing talent, perhaps sensing usefulness. But God was writing a different story beneath Solomon's plans. One day, Jeroboam met a prophet on the road Ahijah. The air was still. The moment felt carved out of time. Ahijah wore a new cloak. And without warning, he took it and tore it, 12 pieces, fluttering like startled birds. He handed 10 pieces to Jeroboam. And he spoke with the weight of heaven. Thus says the Lord, I will tear the kingdom from Solomon's hand and give you 10 tribes. Yet for David's sake I will leave 1 tribe, but Solomon has forsaken me. This was not politics. This was consequence, not because God is unstable, but because God is faithful. Solomon's reign continued, but something had changed. The air in the palace felt different. The music sounded thinner. The gold looked colder. Solomon, who once built the temple with reverence, now built high places with apathy. And the most haunting part, he had the wisdom to know better, and yet he did it anyway. Then the word came, clear, final, unavoidable. The Lord confronted Solomon, not as a distant judge, but as the covenant God who had appeared to him twice. God said, in effect, "You were given wisdom. You were given peace. You were given everything you did not even ask for, but you have turned." And because Solomon's heart was not fully the Lord's, because the king of Israel bent his knee in places he should never have stood, the judgment was pronounced. The kingdom would be torn. Not in Solomon's day for David's sake, for promise's sake, but in his son's day. This was the climax of a slow drift, 1,000 small compromises arriving at one great rupture. A divided heart had done what divided hearts always do. It divided everything else. Solomon lived on, surrounded by splendor yet shadowed by loss. He could count his chariots. He could measure his gold. He could review his achievements, but he could not secure what mattered most, because the kingdom is not held together by wealth. It is held together by worship. When Solomon died, his son Rehoboam took the throne. The people came, pleading for relief from heavy burdens. Rehoboam listened and chose pride. The nation cracked. 10 tribes turned away, following Jeroboam. 2 tribes remained with the house of David. Israel became divided, north and south, as though the land itself mirrored the divided heart of its king. And Solomon's legacy became a paradox, the builder of God's house, who also built places of compromise, the wisest of men, who could not keep his own heart whole. Yet even in judgment, mercy lingered. God did not erase David's line. He preserved a lamp in Jerusalem. He kept a thread of promise alive, quiet, unbroken, moving toward a future Solomon could not see. This story is not told to mock Solomon. It is told to warn us and to invite us, because it is possible to be gifted and still be drifting. It is possible to speak wisely and live unwisely. It is possible to build something beautiful while your private worship quietly fractures. Solomon's downfall was not ignorance. It was divided love. God's justice in this story is sobering. Choices have weight. Worship shapes a nation, a home, a heart. What we tolerate today, we may serve tomorrow. But God's mercy is also here. Even when Solomon failed, God remained faithful to his larger promise. He preserved the line of David, and through that line would come a king greater than Solomon, one whose heart would never divide, one who would build a kingdom that cannot be torn apart. So here is the gentle question for us. Where is your heart being pulled in two? Not only by obvious evils, but by quiet loyalties, small compromises, hidden altars of comfort, approval, control. Bring that division into the light. Pray the prayer Solomon once prayed, truly pray it. Lord, give me an understanding heart. And then choose day by day to worship with wholeness. Because peace does not come from having everything. It comes from belonging completely to God. The temple Solomon built was magnificent, but the truest temple God desires is a heart undivided. And there is hope, real hope, because God can heal what has split. He can reclaim what has wandered. He can make the heart whole again. Hold to Him, return to Him. And let this be your final word. A divided heart divides a life, but a surrendered heart becomes a home for God. If you want more cinematic Bible stories like this, subscribe and continue the journey with us.